Live and in person.
Good evening, everyone. It's 5:40, and we will begin the Finance Committee meeting for the Providence Public School Board tonight. So we have two members here of the committee, and we have the Vice President of the School Board who's going to be observing. So I think we have enough quorum. The other members are going to join us soon. So let's start rolling with the approval of the agenda. We have a motion. Second. No, you are the first one. Oh, okay. Yeah, he is.
How you doing?
Good. How are you?
Good.
All right. We got started a minute ago, and on the approval of the agenda.
Okay.
Are you on? You just seconded without the first one, so it will be the first one. Are you seconding
My
that?
second.
Okay. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition, any abstentions? The ayes carried. So we have items 3 and 4, the approval of the consent agenda. Do we have a motion to move that?
Motion.
So moved by Mr. Taro. Stevens, second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? The aye carried. So we have a few contracts tonight. We're going to start with the action sports. Is anyone here to present that for us? Action sports.
Yes.
Go ahead, sir.
So we're looking to replace the track inside PCTA with the action sports, the Mondo surface, in the amount of $365,000.
Okay. Questions from members of the Finance Committee?
Really quick, what's your name?
Jason.
Hey, Jason. Tyro, nice to meet you.
How are you?
I'm doing good. We're replacing the track. Are we probably replacing this really due to just making sure that we update it because a lot of track needs to take place there? Okay.
Yeah, massive wear and tear.
Because my question was gonna be, we have like gyms and stuff that need to be renovated, but I understand the usage of having a new track there, so I'm not gonna complain about that. I think that is needed.
Thank you. I have a few questions on this, and I think we need to, going forward, try to get some details.
Sure.
I'm looking at this, it's just saying 365,000, no more detail of what's going to be the cost of materials, labor, what is the time of completion, when is it going to start, and all that. I think we're not just going to sit down here and say, okay, go ahead and approve 365,000 without knowing what it actually entails.
Sure.
I remember the last meeting we had some similar situations like that, but we will need the details. It's very important because we are not going to present this to the full board without looking at what does it entail. This is vague as far as I'm concerned, so we will appreciate if we can get the full details of what it entails. I mean, we might not say no to it because you are the expert and all that, but at the same time, if we know what it entails, we can look at, okay, what are the things, what are the options and alternatives to that.
Can I hop in there?
Go ahead.
So we did bid this as a lump sum fixed fee project, so we don't have additional materials in terms of, or additional detail in terms of like time and materials. We can absolutely provide like timeline on installation and those sort of things, but the 365 is actually the most detail that we have on the cost of the project.
Okay. Yeah, we will need whatever we can in terms of the timeline and all that to be able to like go through with this.
Would you like it verbally now or?
Yeah, if you want to give it
Yeah,
up.
sure. So I actually spoke to the gentleman right now. There was only one bidder on the Mondo surface.
Okay.
So the lead time is up to 12 weeks.
Okay.
The material comes from Europe. So by the time it gets here, and then the replacement time to rip up the current track and then lay this one is 4 weeks.
Okay.
So we're looking at a 16-week project from the day that these guys
Start.
given the approval to order and then do the work. I'm hoping it can work kind of simultaneously where they can start to rip up and replace while we await the product arrival. But as it's coming from Europe, the exact time is kind of a big gap.
Certain, yeah. So also, I see the company has been working since 1998, according to what we see here. Do we have did you go through any of their previous completed projects? Do we have anything that speaks to that?
I do, but not here today.
Not
But
here.
yes, I do have that.
All
Yeah,
right.
their previous, the other places they've done this type of material. The Reggie Lewis Center
Mhm.
up in Boston,
Right.
that's the surface that we're looking to put down, that Mondo surface.
Oh,
That's what we're looking to kind of replace this with, as a longer shelf life and can withstand the amount of usage. But the other buildings I have back in my office, but not with me.
not really. Okay. Will you be kind to share that with us
I
so
will.
we can present for this full school board meeting?
Definitely.
Thank you so much.
You're
So,
welcome.
so what are we doing to keep up with the maintenance of this? Because I do look at the track. I'm normally at PCTA a lot,
Yep.
and I'm always in the gym a lot, and I see that not only like the track, but a lot of the things that's there has been destroyed, and PCTA was rebuilt when in 2010 or something like
Yeah,
that.
opened in 2010, yeah.
So what are we going to do to keep up with the maintenance after we spend all of this money?
So it comes with an action plan, and as we have stuff in there, right? You move the bleachers around and things like that cause that. So there are definitely ways that they were not following in maintaining the proper usage of the other materials. Which now that we have new leadership in the Aramark, Andy Page is took over for Rupert, so he'll be spearheading all that. When we have events in there, who's going to be overseeing these projects that go on?
And one question to that: do we charge rental fees for use of PCTA?
Yes.
Yeah, so that's one way we have so that we're charging for use, so then we can put it back
Into it.
So
Yes.
then, okay, cool.
So it's the only place in the state of Rhode Island for interscholastic league track and field. So from Thanksgiving to essentially Easter, it's the only place in the state where any kid in high school runs. So it's all done right there. And then they do pay a rental fee in there. Like, we don't just let them in there.
So
So
then that allows us to
their rental starts us to, fix these little things as they happen, as they continue to pop up.
So have we been doing that?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
We've made multiple repairs to that track surface, but
Yeah.
it just that the repairs don't keep up to the wear and tear of the surface. And,
Correct.
we felt as though instead of spending $40,000 a shop to keep repairing, this would be our best option, just to repair it in one shot instead of keep putting band-aids on it.
And the facility is also the house to the Providence Rec in the entire summer. They run camps for the 2 months we're out of school.
Mhm.
They utilize that facility for free camps for the kids for the summer. So that building is busy 12 months a year.
Interesting.
I think it's needed. I just hope that we have sort of like a more strict
Yes.
plan on maintaining it. Because when I go there, I see a whole bunch of gum on the floor. A lot of the chairs that's there for like the basketball players are destroyed. So I just really want to make sure that we just keep up with the maintenance.
Sure.
And making sure people ain't walking on the floor with gum and walking on there with juice, things like that. So if we could be more strict, I think that would calm me down. Yeah. You can keep it. Don't be my face.
And so the turnaround for this is so once every 10 years, is that my understanding? It was done 10 years ago. So
Yeah,
we're looking
yeah.
at- okay.
And that's our normal wear and tear, but because it's the school it's the school and it's also track at night, so it kind of wears a little quicker. So we're kind of past our shelf life on the existing floor now.
Okay.
The glue is coming undone. So,
All right. Any other question? No. So in the absence of any other question, can we have a motion to recommend this for approval and present to the full board?
Motion.
So moved.
A second.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposition? Any abstention? That's aye. Ayes carried. Thank you so much for giving us that
Thank you,
information.
Julius.
But we look forward to getting into those details. You can send it to Al.
I will.
Thank you so much, sir. School Neuropsychology Institute. Hello, how are you?
Hi, good, how are you?
Good, thank you.
Great, it's my first time here, so it'll be easy on me. So I'm Natalie Fleming. I am a school psychologist in the district and have taken the position of Director of Social Emotional Learning and Mental Health, which will oversee school psychologists and school social workers and support the multi-tier system of support of social emotional learning and mental health in the district. So excited for this new department. This particular program is the School Neuropsychology Certification Program. It's a 10-month program it actually went through this committee already, and we approved 3 of our lead school psychologists to go through this program. And so we're asking for 8 additional school psychologists in the district who have shown interest to go through for $6,000 per psychologist for a total of $48,000. This is going to help enhance our culturally and linguistically appropriate assessments systems, as well as tools, which is the next piece on here. We really need an update in this area to meet the diverse needs of our students, as well as to provide training to our support staff that meets the needs of our students. And this is funded through the school-based mental health grant, which is a 5-year grant awarded to Providence with the purpose of increasing the number of school psychologists, school social workers, and school counselors in the district through maintaining, recruitment and retention strategies. So we're really looking at this as a retention and recruitment strategy to bring in highly qualified support staff, as well as retain our highly qualified staff.
Thank you so much. Question?
Yeah, I have one question. I just want to say I'm very happy on this contract. I think that this neuropsychology certification program is going to help a lot of teachers, again, and the additional skills they need to help our kids. So one question is there a way we can add more number, like more teachers? I just see like 8.
So this is specific for the school psychologists, and we have a shortage of school psychologists. So I'm sure I'll be at people begging for other things. So those are the folks that showed interest and that are able to do this program right now. Right now we have 21 school psychologists in the district.
Okay.
The recommended ratio is 1 to 500, so we need about 46.
Wow.
And so that's really the number that we have right now that's able to go through this program and then perform the assessments based on their requirements.
Thank you.
Question. So we need 8 more now.
So we'll have a total of 11 going through the program because we were already previously approved.
Oh, no, 11 plus this 8 or
No, 11 total.
11 total.
Correct.
And we need 46 based on this per student
We
ratio.
need 46 positions. Yes, we only have 21 right now. in
We
the
only have
district.
21.
Mhm.
So you think that, to his question, if we have, we're short of the psychologists, and but we need to train everybody,
The
Well,
school
if I get it.
psychologist.
the school psychologists.
So it's specific to advancing the school psychologist's ability to provide psychological testing and assessment for those students who require that level of assessment, so that we can then appropriately create plans and implement interventions that they need.
The 11 that will be going through the certification program are already current employees of the district.
In the districts.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay. And you think they'll be able to cover everybody that needs the service? Is that correct?
No.
I think there's 8.
So if it is no, that means we may need more,
We do need more.
We do
of
need
course.
more.
Yeah.
but we don't want to ask for more.
Well, we don't have the staff right
We don't
now.
have to start right now.
Yeah, so this would provide, so out of the 21 school psychologists that are currently employed,
Mhm.
this would provide 11 with them with this advanced training
Okay.
and assessment material to provide a higher quality of assessment and intervention to the students who need it.
Okay. So how soon do we think we're gonna let the district know if we need more? I mean, I'm saying that if we need more, I mean, maybe we'll not be here again until a year from now. But within this time, if we need more, I think we should make that requisition so that, this is very important, something. So what's the procedure? Can we come back 3 months from now, 6 months from now, and make analysis of have we been able to cover the necessary thing? Do we need more? Is there any room for that?
I think that the conversation, so for this particular program,
Mhm.
we have offered to the max that we're capable of right now,
Okay.
based on the staff that we have
Okay.
and their qualifications.
Okay.
And so I would love to come back and talk about adding additional positions, and talk and provide any information you need on that.
Okay.
And once we fill and we have the ability to budget for those positions, absolutely going through this program to make sure that we have, advanced skill and appropriate assessment in the district is important, for sure.
Thanks, Larry. Any other questions?
So it's only 8, I don't even know the word, how to pronounce it.
Psychology.
We have 21, but only 8's gonna go through it.
11
11.
total.
11
Three
total.
were approved at a previous finance.
All right, so 3 was approved, 11 in total for the 21 that we have.
Correct.
Why can't we get all 21 of them to do it?
That's the question I asked. They said
Do we have this meeting every week?
I'm sorry.
So it is a pretty intense program. And so it's a 10-month program that's Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And so these individuals are giving up their family time, their personal time to take this
Okay,
program. So out of the 21, 11 said that they would be interested and able
okay,
to take this outside of their work time, because it is a big investment that many have wanted to do, but it also is $6,000, and then with additional materials. So they're very grateful for the opportunity to advance their skills, and also this allows us to get higher quality and culturally and linguistically appropriate assessments in the district that we need. So it really opens the door for a lot of these pieces. This grant is a 5-year grant. We'll be in year 3 next year. And so and this program is continuous. So next year, we could be back at this table asking for more, because more people may say, I have the ability to do it this year. And as we hire more, hopefully, we will be able to offer that. And to that point, one of the recruitment strategies is that we're providing these programs and these abilities to hopefully recruit highly qualified school psychologists into the district, if we can use our grant funding to support these programs.
The certification program was offered to all 21 employees, and that's the number that was
Okay.
able to come in.
sounds good.
Sounds good. Good luck in doing that. Motion to move.
Motion.
So move second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? The ayes carry. Thank you so much.
Thank
Good
you.
luck and keep us posted, please.
Absolutely, thank you.
Pearson.
That's me too.
We'll be here waiting for you. Pearson.
So this is $85,304 to support the assessment. So to support the material of our support staff going through this program, as well as to enhance our comprehensive assessment system and the tools that we have in the district for psychological, cognitive assessment, educational, achievement testing. Right now, we only have one tool. It's called the WISC, the Wechsler Intelligence Scale for Children. So this would allow us to have a broader array of evaluation materials, and it's up to date with what evidence is saying, evidence-based practices on how we assess. So we're really using out-of-date assessment tools right now. So this provides us the ability to really support our students and families effectively, and provide high-quality assessment.
Interesting. Questions? Do you have any question?
And we're sharing, just to give what we're sharing kits right now. So out of the 21 psychologists, they're split across the 41 schools. And we have zones set up where they have to kind of work with each other to get the assessment tools, because we don't have enough in the district. So this would provide the ability to not have to add another layer to really servicing our students and getting those assessments completed quickly and efficiently.
Interesting. Thank you so much. And I appreciate the breakdown that you also provided. And I know that it's only in English and Spanish. Am I saying the right thing, right?
Yes, yes. Yes, so the differential ability scales, the last one on that list, it comes with an early year Spanish additional kit, but that is actually shown right now as the best practices to utilize with cultural and linguistically diverse student population. So it has more cultural. So a lot of times we use like visuals and pictures that are really culturally appropriate for students who grew up in an Arab America.
Mm.
This test has been updated to be much more culturally appropriate and can be provided in like non-verbally
Mm.
if needed, if there is a linguistic barrier. And it also has scripts in I think it's like 3 to 5 different languages. I can get that information for you.
Okay.
But that requires the practitioner to be fluent in that language. So we have 11 bilingual school social workers right now and 7 bilingual school psychologists. 3 of them are multilingual. So they would be able, 11 of them would be able to provide the Spanish, and 3 of them would be able to provide the other languages if appropriate. So that's why that's on that list.
Okay.
So yeah, thank you for that question.
Because I was concerned if it is in the 2 languages, what's the provision we're making for somebody who doesn't speak Spanish and it's not fluent in English? So I think you answered my question. Any other question?
How long is this program going to be?
The neuropsych program, that one is 10 months.
It's 10 months.
Yeah, but it's offered yearly.
Okay. And then after the 10 months is up, what are some of like the results that the district would like to see with the staff members going through with the program?
Yeah, good question. So one thing that I am planning on doing once we have this all finalized is getting that group of psychologists who are going through this and developing kind of a plan of, okay, here's after we're done, how are we going to utilize this to enhance our assessments and our assessment implementation, right? So not only of how we're providing the test, but how are we then presenting that to the teachers and to the families and to the students so that they can actually use the information to advance their access to learning, right? So the whole point of doing assessment is so that you understand your strengths and weaknesses, the teacher understands how to teach more effectively, what strategies, and so the school psychologist is going to advance their ability to consult more effectively and then provide the recommendations. Because a lot of times you go to a meeting, right, and then you just talk about the results and you're like, okay, great, have a nice day. Whereas the point is, how is this going to help you access your learning more and bring more self-awareness to your strengths and weaknesses? And as a parent, you're not going to understand if I say your verbal comprehension is blah, 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 blah. So we have to get better at the language you're using and the recommendations that we're providing so they're more effective. So that would be some of the suggestions that we're going to write into kind of a plan that everyone who's going through the program is going to agree to.
Yeah, I hope that the district takes this serious, definitely the social and emotional learning for students' mental health, due to the fact that we're not going to see results in RIDECAST, we're not going to see results in the TAP unless we prioritize social and emotional learning for our students, because the students don't want to show up to school. They're not interested. If they're going through a lot, they're not going to want to focus in the classroom. So we really need to make sure we really prioritize on things like this. If we need to bring in extra staff members, I really hope that that's something that folks need to advocate for, that we really advocate for, to be able to provide for our students. Because we know after the pandemic, not only after the pandemic, but even before the pandemic, our students here in Providence were going through a lot. I was one of the students, and I see a lot of the things that my classmates were going through. Now I'm stuttering on my words. But I really think that this is something we really need to prioritize, and making sure that we really bring in support so we could better situate our students. Because I can care less about the grades and stuff. None of that matters unless we prioritize our focus on the social and emotional learning. So I really hope that this works, and we'll see. 11 months from now, I'll give you a little bit of time after that, but 11 months from now,
You're going to be a school psychologist by that point.
I think so.
We're going to recruit you.
Questions? Any other further questions?
Oh, no.
Okay. We have a motion to
Motion.
so move. Second. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposition? Any abstentions? The ayes got it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Data Recognition Corporation. $2 million. Not to exceed. Scary.
Yes, so today I am presenting a new contract for the Data Recognition Corporation, or DRC. For those of you who may not know, DRC is a platform we currently use for access testing, which is a state test that every multilingual learner takes in the state of Rhode Island and over 35 states in the country. RIDE pays for the students to take this test every year. It's a federal government mandate that we test all of our multilingual learners once a year. And as part of our TAP goal, it's important that our students are making growth as seen on this exam year to year. Right now, when we look at our access results, only about 2% of our multilingual learners are meeting exit criteria. So that means that they've met the goal to no longer need MLL services. And one of the reasons I believe is because we don't really have a progress monitoring tool throughout the year to measure how our students are doing in all of the language domains. So listening, speaking, reading, and writing. We take this access test once a year, and results unfortunately take about 8 or 9 months to get. And so then by the time we get the results, it's really hard to do much with that data. And so with this contract, I'm proposing that we use this company DRC, which is the same platform where students already take access, to give a beginning of the year assessment to all of our multilingual learners, and also an end of year assessment, so that the teachers who work with our multilingual learners will have readily available data that they can use to inform their instruction. So the cost of this contract is really to pay for every single multilingual learner, about 8,000 students, to take this test beginning and end of year, and for them to score it so that we get the results back and are able to use those results. It's also including a Spanish language arts assessment, so very similar to the English assessment. I want to make sure that we are using Spanish language data for our students in the dual language programs. We support bilingualism, but we haven't really been measuring the progress that our students are making in Spanish literacy skills and in all 4 language domains. So similar to the assessment at the beginning of the year and end of year for our multilingual learners, we'd like to do that for all students enrolled in dual language, which is about 1,800 students next year.
I want to be sure I'm looking at the right thing. This is Carport, right?
No. Data Recognition Corporation.
Because the way it's lined up here, I'm looking at what you're saying, and that's why I said 2 million. That's I'm like, this is entirely different from what
You just cut out.
It is
We're not there yet.
What item is that on the agenda? Is it number 9 or number?
It's number 8. Yeah.
Oh, I marked it before we got there. But it's the material here.
There you go. Is that it? Is that the page you just?
The 85,000?
No, 6.
600.
608. Oh my God. Person is 85.
How many five?
I'm like, oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Thank you so much. I didn't bring my glasses, so that's fine.
Okay.
But I don't.
I'll ask a question really quick. What do we have any systems we currently use that addresses this, or is this something new?
This would be new. Yeah, we don't have an assessment to measure all 4 language domains.
Okay.
We have, internal reading assessments that we do to measure how students are reading, but it's not really aligned to the WEDA standards that our students take when they're taking this test. So we really are going at this access test blindly. We have data from the prior year, but nothing really substantial to help our teachers prepare the students to take this test. And they take it in January, February, that's the test window.
How is this going to help us with the DOJ program? I know you've been here,
Yes.
DOJ, like
Absolutely.
will this help us to achieve the target for the DOJ?
Yeah, well, for the DOJ, it's really important that we are providing adequate services to our multilingual learners. And the end result is really that we see growth, right? We don't just want them to be sitting in a classroom with ESL certified teachers, but instruction has to be meaningful and it has to be targeted to their levels. And right now, what we are able to give teachers is the results that they have on access, which again is usually about 9 months prior. So kids take the test in January, February. We are getting the results now at the end of the year. But at this point in the year, it's hard to do much with the data. So the true teachers who look at the data is like the following school year in August, September. So at that point, teachers are looking at their students' data, but it's 9 months old, and there's a lot of progress that has been made in language during those 9 months. And so it's hard to really target the skills that students need at that point in the year when they're working with data that's pretty old. And so hopefully this data that is going to be more available to teachers with what students actually know at the time when they start school will allow teachers to really target the skills that kids need. So when they're taking English language development, which is a course that DOJ requires, teachers are really targeting those skills that they need to go to the next level.
Interesting. Any other question? And this is new, right?
This would be new to the district.
To the district.
Yes.
So do we have any scholarship for this company that we?
Well, we work with the company already because they are the same company that provides the platform for access. So when students take the access test and when they'll take this monitoring assessment, it'll be on the exact same platform. All of our coaches and administrators are very familiar with the platform and how to use it. I do want to provide training, but almost everyone in the district who's administered access before is very familiar with the platform already. We've been using it for many years.
Thank you.
I think this is a great. I was just commenting. This is I think it's gonna be a great platform for us to use.
Yeah, I agree.
Motion to recommend. So moved.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposition? Any abstention? The ayes have it. Thank you so much. Catapult Learning. That's the next one.
That's gonna be me.
How about this morning?
Molly Hannon, I'm the Director of Purchasing for the district. We are proposing a contract with Catapult Learning for various supplemental academic services for our non-public and private schools for whom we are the fiscal agent for various forms of federal funding. So it's Title I, Title II, Title IV funds that are allocated to the students who attend participating in eligible non-public and private schools. We have partnered with Catapult for the past 3 years, so this would be a renewal of our work with Catapult for what is kind of a menu of supplemental academic services, including tutoring, professional development, after school, family engagement, again, for non-public and private schools, in an amount not to exceed $2 million. So the table you see on that last page is the sort of menu that we would offer through Catapult to these schools, and they can build their program plans in part with items on this menu with hourly and daily rates in their schools. I'm happy to take any questions.
So thank you so much, Molly. So these are services that we render to non-public schools.
Correct. Yep.
So the services are rendered over there or here.
On site at those non-public
At those
and private schools and virtually. Yes.
Okay. And this is the second year, right, of this contract?
We issued in maybe it's 2018 a similar contract that was awarded to Catapult Learning. We did use Catapult for 3 years. We issued a new RFP this winter and spring, received new bids. A team evaluated the bids and determined that Catapult was the provider that we'd like to go with and continue going with.
We have a data of students that have participated in schools and the ones we've done in the past. Are we able to see how successful, what's the evaluation of those?
I don't know that we have
I don't think
we have quantitative data, but in terms of qualitative data, the feedback that we do get from these schools is very positive, and they continue. The contract grows in number because it is a great resource for them, because it has a variety of options that they can pick from, and it is high quality options. We did include one of our private school assistant principals in the process of evaluating the bids that we received, and she was supportive of continuing engagement with Catapult Learning.
How many of those schools are we serving right now? Do you know the number?
30, a little 32, about 30.
No, it doesn't exceed 30.
not exceed third. Because now I'm looking at the potential for increment, especially with the springing up of charter schools and all the other things. So now we might be looking to serve more.
They won't these are only for non-public, so charter schools won't participate in this because we're not fiduciary of those funds for charter schools. We're only fiduciary of the funds for the non-publics.
So would you explain how that works? Why are we the fiduciary
Because
even
those-
for a
those-
non-public school, or private school?
Right, because those students are in our census data, and we receive federal dollars for those students that are in public schools. So if you're an LEA and you're a charter school, you're able to apply for federal dollars. The non-publics cannot. They apply essentially through us. We're given money from the federal government to supplement those services. for
So
the
you're saying
non-publics.
that if I have a child and I live in Providence, but I send my child to a private school, you're saying that you all
They need to participate.
in this program?
They need to participate in our federal program, so
The private
The
school.
school
private,
itself.
I'm sorry, not the student, the school says, yes, I want to participate, with your Title I, Title II, and Title IV funding. So we send out surveys to those, non-public schools and ask if they want to participate.
So ultimately, where is the funding coming from? To pay
Federal
for
government.
From the federal government to pay for Catapult. So FYI, I was a site manager for Catapult many years ago, like 15 years ago. So we had a relationship with them for a very long time, so I know how they work. So my question is, first, I didn't understand the relationship between PPSD and a non-public school
Okay.
this way, and I don't think my
No.
colleagues did either. So that right there is one. And then the other is that even if we are serving as just as a fiscal agent, right? We would still want to know something about what the gains are, the progress, the participation, et cetera, of, like, do you have any? I mean, it's basically you're saying that this
It's a pass-through.
non-public,
It's
so
a
it's a
possible.
pass-through situation.
Yeah, because
so-
we don't control their curriculum, their
Okay.
teaching.
Okay, so this is just, you guys get it?
The
So
dollars.
So just the money coming
dollars-
in and we're just
The
distributing.
dollars follow the kids essentially.
Okay.
Federal dollars follow the kids.
And the school, the non-public school is saying, we want to participate in this program, so therefore
Help us
help
get
us
the money.
fund this.
Yeah, they're
for
saying
kids.
we want to provide after-school tutoring services using Title I, Title II, whatever the appropriate federal funding source is.
Mhm.
And we are required to do the procurement of
Yeah.
the vendor that will ultimately provide those services on their behalf.
All right, so then these schools are saying, this is working, keep it coming.
Because if not, we have a multitude, we've tried to narrow it down a few years ago to go with one vendor that can provide a full cafeteria list of these services to provide. If not, we'd be going to multiple vendors and coming to the board multiple times for multiple contracts to be approved. We've seen that this works best for the non-publics and best for us to go this way.
Thank you. So, homeschooling, is that part of non-public? Does that fall into that category?
No, I don't believe so. Because because there wouldn't be, those students wouldn't be registered with us or be counted in any of our census data, I don't believe. So I believe it's just on the parents to provide that service to them.
They're certainly not included here.
Okay. Okay. Now, the reason why I'm asking about homeschooling is that, in the previous agendas that we've had some items for homeschoolers approval and all that. So if we have had that opportunity to do that, why are we not including them? And what's the criteria for non-public?
Yeah, we wouldn't receive those dollars from the federal government to provide those services because I don't believe they're in any of our accounts.
Interesting.
I can double check, but I'm like 90% sure.
Just kindly help us double check so that at least
Yeah,
we can.
absolutely.
Thank you so much. Any other question? Can we have a motion to recommend this for approval?
Motion.
So moved. Any
Second.
second? Do you have any other question?
No, I had no knowledge
Okay.
of that.
Okay.
So let's move, yeah.
So the motion moved and seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any opposition? Any abstentions? The ayes carry. We will recommend this for the full board, and we should expect to have more questions and at that time. But on our side, we will recommend that. Thank you so much. The next one is Schoolworks.
Good afternoon, everyone.
Good afternoon.
I'm Yvonne Alvarez. I am currently the Chief Academic Officer. Started in January as the Redesign and Innovation Officer, working solely on school improvement with the 6 redesigned schools and 5 comprehensive school improvement schools that we have currently in our district. And I'd like to introduce Chris Sanator, who's our Director of Special Projects for School Improvement, and Kate Wheeler from Schoolworks, who's representing the vendor and can answer any questions, and we'll do some informational briefs on Schoolworks and what they will be doing for us.
Thank you.
Are you working on?
Yeah, I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
We do have a PowerPoint to share.
Oh, okay.
So at the school board meeting in May, it was requested that we present and highlight the differences between a report that was created by SpringPoint and a needs assessment. And we would like to share that, the analysis that we did. And we're going to begin with an overview of SpringPoint and what was completed in March of 2020. Thank you, Alan. So the initial SpringPoint school report reviewed all high schools in March of 2020. And this was, can we click from here, or should we just tell you next slide? Your prerogative.
Just say next.
Okay, next. Great, thank you. So SpringPoint is an education organization that provides school design and strategic advising services to school districts. The SpringPoint's needs assessment and review of all high schools was funded and procured in 2020 by the BART Foundation in partnership with RIDE. And so there was no request for proposal from PPSD or RIDE, and funds were not used to the question of the board back in May to procure that review that was done. So to complete an initial diagnostic, what did they do? They completed an initial diagnostic review of Providence High School with a focus on post-secondary success, suggestions on potential school designs, and they had a school portfolio for redistricting based on data points, meaning the shuffling of students based on the student achievement scores at the time. Next. I think that's the next slide, yeah. So the SpringPoint reports and documents were generated through quantitative data analysis, classroom observations, and some focus groups of stakeholders and administrators at the time. Those reports and documents still remain in draft form and were only shared with school leaders and central office personnel, many of whom which have transitioned out, and school leaders that are no longer at the school sites. The SpringPoint deliverables, although they are a resource, they need to be reviewed against some of the fundamental changes that we've had in education since we've been in the pandemic, and the learning loss that that void of having the lack of contact, right, of the face-to-face teaching instruction has created for our students. And so the new leadership teams at the schools and in central office were also not part of that redesign process, including student voice, parents, community advisory boards, and they did not express the complete vision for redesign at that time, nor does it accurately reflect the vision for redesign that we currently have in the direction that we want to go. Next. So, due to learning loss experienced by our students, turnover in school leadership, as well as turnover in the academics department, redesign plans were paused completely from last July all the way through January until there was a clear vision and support structure for these 6 redesigned schools. So for the past 6 months, we've been working with RIDE to define what that vision would really look like going forward and the type of support based on the requirements for U.S. Department of Education under the ESSA plan in terms of what is needed and required to do a redesign plan for a school. So the recommendations from Spring Point reviews are 2 years old. They were not solely focused on PPSD 6 redesigned schools. They evaluated all high schools in the district for a possible redesign process, and as I said, redistricting as well. Spring Point was not commissioned at the time to provide continuous redesign implementation support to the district and school leaders as recommended by the Every Student Succeeds Act. And it's part of the requirement in the implementation plan. And so a school support partner is recommended by the ESSA plan with a proven record of accomplishment to help improve low performing schools. Next. So the RIDE ESSA plan that was submitted in 2017 and approved in March of 2018 requires that the LEA, which is PPSD, a proposed redesign, which was the selection at the time, has a needs assessment, a plan development, plan approval by the school, by PPSD as the LEA, RIDE, endorsement by the Community Advisory Board, school implementation, which did not occur, and routine monitoring and reporting. And that includes realignment processes in terms of instructional delivery. When things are not working, what do you do? Spring Point conducted the needs assessment based on their rubric, their methodology, not the US DOE methodology, based on 2019 FTE for students at that time. And then they did a quantitative and qualitative analysis. They developed a future plan for recommendations, but did not conduct additional steps to develop a redesign plan, implement, monitor, and then report back out. So that was a critical piece that was missing at the time and continues to be missing. So the schools basically were shared out with, here's a general recommendation. Redesign fellows were hired in the 6 schools to document these plans, but nothing really happened after that. Those redesign fellows were kind of part of the vision and mission development, but there was no redesign implementation that occurred during this past year. And so PPSD does require an experienced education partner to accelerate the redesign process while building off of previous and current school improvement efforts, as well as our data and purpose for launching redesign. And so now I'll let Chris is going to talk actually about the contract and what the structure will be in the setup from beginning to end.
So just a reminder of our redesign schools, there's 6 of them. So it's Alvarez, Hope, Mount Pleasant, JSEC, Del Sesto, and Gilbert Stewart. They're in the redesign status because they've been identified as comprehensive school improvement schools for 3 years, which triggers a new process where they have more time to go through this redesign process and rebuild the school from the ground up. So that's why we're having these conversations today, is because they're still in that status, which allows additional funding to help support those individual schools. Next slide. So Schoolworks is an education organization based in Massachusetts. They've worked with RISE's Office of School and District Improvement, and Kate will tell you more about that in a couple of slides. They are very familiar with our RISE accountability system. They're very familiar with the comprehensive support improvement schools. And the goal is to collaborate with Schoolworks for the next school year, with the work beginning this summer and the contract expiring in June 2023. So the objectives of the partnership are really within these three core buckets. So there's the ongoing process of supporting the PBSD central office to develop a redesign innovation office, and continuing to build school site teams. We don't want to be consultant partnership reliant forever. We want to build up capacity here so we're able to continually support our CSI and our redesign schools. In phase one of this process is supporting the development of the redesign plans in the schools and gathering that input and data from school leaders and educators and community members. And it's also an opportunity to review all the school improvement and redesign work that's happened in this district for the past year and a half. So we're looking at the Spring Point resources that they provided. We're looking at other folks that have come into the district and provided insights and synthesizing that. So we have a really good sense of what's been working, what has been working, where we can move forward. And that's all happening with community members and with educators and with the administrators at the school level. And the second phase of this is the really exciting part, which is actually supporting the planning implementation of the redesign plans and building up that knowledge and capacity at the leadership team level at the schools. Finally, doing that initial planning, that full-on implementation of making sure that those models are running and successful beyond the life of this contract. So if we were to double click on some of the items that are in the school board finance summary form, you would see this for phase one, which is 2-day in-person reviews, surveys and interviews and focus groups with our CAD and SIT members, extensive document reviews. They're looking at student work. They're looking at what are the processes and procedures of operations for the schools. What are some of the academic, places where they can improve? What are things that are lacking? And it'll compile all of these reports together and produce us a document that identifies what's the best path forward for that school, while helping us also complete a redesign application that RIDE has just provided to us. So it's actually this times 6. Every school is going to get this full-on support, and we at the district will be partnering with Schoolworks to go through all of these steps as well.
I have a question. You say if we click on this, it's not here. Where do we see this?
I'm happy to provide these slides for you where it is. It's a little loose now because Schoolworks has been super helpful in being flexible. So if there are things that need to change based off the evolving timeline, we're able to move any of these line items here to be at either phase 1 or phase 2. But I can provide you with these slides here for your overview.
So to be honest with you, I think this information, like this slide, should have been provided to the finance committee ahead of this meeting. We will have had opportunity to look through it. 20 minutes for this slide will not be able to ask qualitative and strong questions. It's just like you're walking us through it. And that's why I had to pause and ask you. You said we should click on it, and I look at this material, there's nothing in there. I hope we can do better, because if you want us to go through this and you're giving us this one, this question was asked previously. I think before now, we should have been able to get the answer, so that when we're walking through it, we're looking at it, all of us together. You have this information, you had it. Now you're just presenting it to us for 5-10 minutes. There's no way we can do justice in trying to analyze this and asking the appropriate question.
So if I may, just to be clear,
Yes.
the phase 1 and phase 2 are part of the contractual, they've been in the contract since we introduced it, and it's the same document that was provided in May. What he's talking about with the click in the CAB and SIT involvement, which are the only 2 highlighted pieces there, is really just what do our school improvement teams and how our community advisory boards, how are they involved and what are their roles in terms of making suggestions through the focus groups that survey Schoolworks will actually gather. So they'll have a focus group of parents, a focus group of school leaders, a focus group. And so what is the community advisory board and school improvement team role in all of that? Because one of the grievances really that the leaders and community advisory boards have had in the last couple of months throughout their meetings and our conversations has been that they were not all involved in the decision-making of some of the initial recommendations in Spring Point.
Okay.
And that they were not in support of those recommendations.
I perfectly understand that and the clarification. Yet, I still maintain that if we're clicking on something and we don't know what we're clicking on,
Okay.
it is important for us to have it. The reason why this is what we are bringing this up right now is to have a redesign of a system that did not work in the previous years, so that in the future it will work. So if we don't know how we get here, how do we know how we can move forward from here? But if we have been able to get this information, then we'll have been able to go through it and recommend or suggest things. We know you guys are doing wonderfully well and trying to put things together. But if we don't have the information, we will not be able to give the right advice. We'll not be able to give the right recommendation. We're just sitting here, yay, nay, and that's it. And I think this is very important, please.
Sure. Mr. Adiele, I couldn't agree with you more. And if I could just jump in for a second. I think that the PowerPoint is comprehensive, and I would have loved to see the entire PowerPoint prior to now, so the board could come in here and have a discussion about, what's being presented. I just find it strange that, we got the contracts ahead of time, but we didn't get the PowerPoint ahead of time. Now, I had to point any fingers, but just want to note that. You mentioned that there's been a change in leadership at the school level, and COVID learning loss has resulted in the need to reassess, correct?
That is part of it. Yes.
Okay. So what happens a year from now if those leaders at the school leave and then we're back in the same boat needing to do an assessment again?
So the entire process is to build capacity with the school team, not just with the principal or the assistant principal, involving the school improvement team as well, and teachers that are teacher leaders at the school site, which is the role of the expert from Schoolworks that will work directly with the school sites.
Which the previous assessment didn't allow for.
Mm-hmm.
It never did any of that. No.
Okay. I referenced the previous one, and I also referenced Engage to Learn as another vendor that I think did some type of an assessment. Do we have any information about what Engage to Learn did or did not do relative to what you're proposing here with Schoolworks?
Engage to Learn was not redesigned.
Okay, what was Engage to Learn?
So
because my understanding was that they did some work around the redesign, but Chris,
yeah, Engage to Learn did do some work around redesign, I think a little after August 2021 and into the fall, but that work also petered out.
It was not implementation.
So it was unfinished. It was still trying to pick up some of the pieces that Spring Point had presented to us, but never manifested to that next level that we're hoping Schoolworks can bring us to, which is actually that planning and implementation of redesign.
Okay, so
which we're required to do by ESSA law.
So, and I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Lee, because I know that this was one that I had brought up during the board meeting. The needs assessment that was completed, or you're saying partially completed, or some completed in some part. Did anybody in the district review that assessment to determine if any of that was still applicable for us to utilize now? Because my understanding is that some of that assessment resulted in 80-page papers in terms of like recommendations at Mount Pleasant and other schools. So I'm just curious in terms of what did we gain from that was done that we could utilize now, since we're saying that we need to sort of scrap what was done there and essentially start over.
I wouldn't say that we're scrapping that work. That's why we put in the slides that we're still going to use all of those previous reports as resources. And part of the charge that we're asking schools to do is look at all those reports and synthesize the data and see what's the right path forward based on what's already been happening. So I wouldn't say the work's all entirely lost. It's going to be a part of this story and this narrative, but there's other things that need to happen in order to fully redesign those schools and get the right voice that the capable implement it.
So, right. So one could argue that the information that was provided in the previous assessment, it could still be utilized going forward.
Absolutely, if I may, we, as the vendor, we would use that as part of our document review. It would be one of the very first things we actually reviewed. And, you know, what we need is an updated perspective of what's going on in the schools, given the last 2 years of, you know, various administration changes, different, you know, practices within the schools. And then the critical piece to what you spoke of earlier about, you know, what if an administrator leaves? The real critical piece is getting this needs assessment from the visits to then facilitate planning within the schools. So the schools are the ones driving the plan and the implementation of the plan, so that they are the ones to move it along. Whereas in previous years, they didn't get to the actual planning part or the implementation. So they were just kind of left with a report. Our job is to work ourselves out of a job. That is what we do. So our job is to come in and to work with the schools, get all the data together from the various stakeholders, analyze that, put that back out as a mirror to say, this is what we're hearing, this is what we're seeing, and then facilitate conversations with community members and with the schools to say, what does your redesign look like? And then work with them to implement that plan.
Okay, just a quick follow-up question. And I'll turn it back over to you, Mr. Daly. In your opinion, and in your experience, how frequently does a school district, or should a school district, go through this process? Because it seems like here, we went through this process not too long ago, and we're going through it again in some aspect, because I'm hearing that you're going to pull or you're going to utilize what was used previously, and that's good to hear. But how frequently should a school district go through this? And the reason why I ask is because, you know, I hear you mention about building capacity here in central office to maintain this, but should we be also looking at building capacity at the school level? And the reason why I say that is because if there is a change in leadership or what have you, at least we have the bones there to continue doing this work, and we're not back here again looking at, you know, another $500,000 contract.
And that's, I apologize if I misspoke. It is about building capacity at the school level. So that's why we would work with each of the 6 schools independently, so that we're building that structure and that capacity within their leadership teams. So if the principal left next year, somebody else can come pick it up, and the whole school knows what's going on, so they can continue moving that forward. Mm-hmm. That's absolutely about it, as well as including the district in that all along. So there aren't these questions of like, wait, where are we? What are we doing? To your question about the frequency, we work with schools all across the country. Many districts and states with whom we work, we do this annually. However, we don't have this massive planning and redesign implementation piece. The idea would be, if we're redesigning the schools, or the schools are redesigning themselves, and we are helping to facilitate that, they shouldn't need this. They should need some kind of monitoring along the way of how are you doing incorporating or implementing your action plan. But that can also be done at the central office level. That doesn't need to be done by us. So we do, like, for example, for the state of Colorado, they're underperforming schools, which are, the term is on the clock. We go there annually to see what is going on with the schools, and we then make recommendations to their board of, should it be a redesigned school, should it be a restart, go to charter. But they're not investing in that planning. Once they start investing in that planning, and that's something they do independently, we don't do that. You know, they ideally are moving on and improving, so this doesn't need to be done again.
Yeah, in closing, I would just ask, because I'm pretty sure that I'm going to have some additional questions.
Yeah.
If I could, Lindsay, if the finance committee, or maybe even better, the full board, can get a copy of the PowerPoint to review, and if we have, I know I'm certainly going to have some additional questions that I could certainly reach out to you or to Lindsay to answer.
Yeah, Chris can provide you all my information and with the PowerPoint, and I'm happy to answer anything.
Okay, and just so I'm clear, at the end of this contract, the district will be in a place where the capacity will be there for the district to sustain itself going forward, and we wouldn't need to go through this process again in terms of the needs assessment aspect of it. Am I correct?
That's correct. The reason we are the facilitators and we're not coming in and giving you a plan is because it would never work, right? If we come in and say, this is what you should do to a school, they're never going to implement it, right? You have to get the buy-in. You have to know what the community thinks. You have to know what the school is feeling. What's the environment like in the school in order to build on that and help to implement it within the school. And that's not something we can just put on somebody to do and tell them what to do. They need to make those decisions and they need to have that buy-in.
And that was really more of the position of what happened at Spring Point, because they were charged with doing some of the planning, and then in their 3 phases, there came a point where their last phase took them through August of 2020, but schools were all closed in March. So March, April, May, June, July, and August, the last 6 months of their work was really done in isolation. And not with the input from the students, the parents, the leaders, the board, everyone that should have been involved in making those decisions. So then everyone got this report that said, here, this is what you should do. And they really were not part of that process.
Okay.
Thank you.
Stevie, and that's all I have. I apologize.
No.
Jumping in there.
It's not apology. Yeah, it's all in this together.
Mm-hmm.
You have a question? I think I stopped. I'm sorry for
That's
cutting
all right, I
short.
gotta
So.
figure out where we are.
We jumped around.
I think just let's go to the next
We're
slide,
on
see what happens.
We're on the
Take a
3rd
gamble.
floor of the PPSD. All right. So we can move to the next slide.
So this is phase 2. This would be the initial plan implementation of the redesign plans. So we would have support at the district level from Schoolworks. We would also have support from Schoolworks at the school level. And I can actually flesh this out in the next slide even more on how we'd actually pull this off. So the project will be overseen by one general project manager from the Schoolworks team, and who will serve as the primary point of contact for the school district. And the planning manager will be assigned to and a planning manager separate from the project manager will be assigned to each school to manage and co-facilitate the school level planning process. And individual project team members will be assigned to the district to each school to support phase 1, and they'll also support phase 2 afterwards. And the project teams are going to be qualified specialists and staff members who are expertise in doing school innovation and redesign. And I think I'm rushing because I think the next slide you're actually going to see this more visually. So this is what it would look like on the Schoolworks end. So, my role with the guidance that we've on would be working with this project manager, and they would have the planning manager at each of the school levels providing that redesign support. And I think to Mr. Thomas's concern, the review team would actually be the review team would actually be that school team that's building up the capacity to lead that school. So if there are any shifts or changes in leadership, they're there to hold the anchor that school and maintain that work moving forward. So that will be constituted by, the school improvement team members, which is made up of community members, parents, and educators and administrators, but also the community advisory board members. They'll have a unique role in this work. We'll also sit on the review team to make sure that work continues no matter what.
And I will just add, and I'm actually up next, but the project manager is a PPSD former student. So she's very much looking forward to doing this work. So a little bit about Schoolworks just in general. I'll hurry this through because I know you guys have other things on the agenda. We started out almost 25 years ago doing school quality reviews across the country. But I think what's most important here for you all are the 2 areas on the end: accountability, and then the other side, school developer supports. So we help schools all across the country and districts and other entities start schools and redesign schools. So we do that actual writing and the facilitation for them. On the flip side, the accountability, we work with states and districts like Rhode Island itself to review those applications and to interview entities who want to redesign their schools, start new schools, to see if they have the capacity to do that. We can go to the next slide. And again, I'll be happy to answer any follow-up questions for you all after this. I know it's a lot of information. Here are just a few of our clients where we do similar work. I think most relevant, and I'll talk about these in the upcoming slides, RIDE that I just mentioned, Massachusetts Department of Education, as well as Colorado Department of Education, which I mentioned earlier. Next slide, please. So our Schoolworks quality criteria that we use to review schools is a research-based protocol, which we had developed in 2011 and then updated in 2018. Mostly because we wanted to make sure, obviously, the research was up to date, but that we felt we needed more robust research and information on diversity, equity, inclusion, as well as English language learners. And so we look at instruction, students' opportunities to learn, educators' opportunities to learn, and leadership and governance. Since 2016 and currently, here are the 4 veins of work that we do with RIDE. As I mentioned, they're new seat applications. We also work for the renewal site visit reviews. We have done their implementation site visits last year and this year. One is probably just ended about 50 minutes ago. And then we have worked, a different division that will be working on this for Providence, worked with RIDE to design the redesign program. Next slide, please.
Can you go back one?
Okay, so I will just conclude with, we talked a little bit about what makes us different. One of the things that I love the most is everybody at Schoolworks, other than our office staff and our director of business development, is a former educator or teacher leader. So we've all taught, we've all led in some sort of role. So we have been on the flip side, right? I've been on the flip side of these site visits. I've been in the district. We're not coming to say, hey, go do this. We don't know what we're talking about. We've been in these seats before. As well as everything we do is evidence-based. We're not just going to come in and say, oh, you should do this, right? We're looking at what we're finding at the school. We're looking at what we're hearing from the community. That's how we're helping make decisions, as well as making sure we're looking at equity and really the importance of school culture and policies to make sure that we are helping, because we're not making the decision, but helping the schools and the district make the right decision in their redesign efforts. Next slide.
And so just to recap on the redesign timeline, this is really what it would look like if we start towards the end of June. We would kick off the events with the district and the school leaders in terms of what are we going to do moving forward, what do we need, which they've all been anticipating for over a year now to begin their redesign timelines. And then moving in through the rest of the summer, July to August, with district and principal meetings, meeting with school improvement teams and community advisory boards, engaging them in focus groups so that they can provide their feedback, data analysis and report reviews, which Schoolworks completes, including anything that's been done by other vendors, universities and colleges that we've partnered with. And then ending the phase 1 in August with school reports and redesign recommendations. Then phase 2 would start August to September, classroom observations once students are back in school. The application that is due to RIDE, which is part of the requirement for the redesign schools, would be completed. And then in September, we would do the submission of those applications. November, really important month. All of this information would be presented to the Council of Elementary and Secondary Education at their November 15th meeting to say, this is what we've worked on over the last several months. Here is the consensus from the school, the parents, the students, the leaders, and the community on what the model should look like and the plan going forward. And then once that's approved and finalized, we would begin the implementation phase of the plan with all of the support personnel that we showed you in some of the visual slides to actually make this work within the framework of instructional delivery, which is what has not happened to date. Next slide. Thank you. So just a quick comparison, when we look at Spring Point and what they did versus what we're requesting Schoolworks to do. When they looked at the school population, they looked at all Providence high schools versus the 6 specific schools that we're required to work with at this moment. The scope of the work in terms of high school reviews focus on post-secondary success and student populations. For Spring Point, they had staff and stakeholder focus groups with the different groups, but again, what just to recap the conversation, there's been a dramatic change of leadership at the school sites as well as in central office. And then, of course, they did a lot of quantitative data analysis after that. But as we all know, baseline and pre-pandemic student achievement looks different in different categories than it does right now, and what we need to actually address going forward and how we have to shift. And so their outputs were really more about high school observation reports, the redesign model recommendations, and redistricting based on data, which would have involved the community making decisions about students moving from schools to schools, not just a recommendation to say your student would go to a different school based on what they said. That's not a decision that communities take lightly. It involves a lot of time and information so that you can see the true impact of those student shifts from one high school to the other. Quantitative indicators to identify readiness for post-secondary success was really what they were looking at. And again, it was based on their methodology and not the U.S. Department of Education, which is very different. So what we're asking Schoolworks to do in the timeline is take a look at the redesign planning, create that redesign plan, implement with the schools, support that they provide is the support that's required by ESSA, which is the US DOE requirement throughout the school year. And then also have a community engagement plan for students, school leaders, teachers, community advisory boards, and school improvement teams. And then have data reviews and synthesis of, as we said, all previous redesigned documents and efforts. And then, of course, the output being the school reviews and reports to meet requirements and compliance, because we are receiving money to support our schools. And we turn in all of those documents to RIDE, and RIDE turns them over to USDOE. We need technical assistance in preparing that redesign application to present to the Council of Elementary and Secondary Education, which Schoolworks will also assist us in doing, and continuous strategic support for planning, implementing, and monitoring the redesign plans, which is really the execution of the plan is so important because it's what has been lacking in our schools that have not demonstrated the improvement that's required. Next slide. So just some key takeaways. If we partner again with Schoolworks, we're going to accelerate the redesign timeline, synthesize previous reports and data, include the community voice within the redesign process, and prepare for the initial planning implementation of redesign plans this coming school year. They would, of course, Spring Point, in the comparison, we described that those reviews are 2 years old and were not solely focused on redesign schools. They were never intended to provide ongoing redesign implementation support to district and school leaders. And they also do not account for the additional learning loss students have experienced between 2020 and 2022. Next slide. So additional information on redesign and community participation will be shared with district staff, school teams, SIT and CAB members once the scope of the work and the contract is approved for maximum engagement. And then the execution of the contract will develop the plan to redesign the 6 schools, including intervention strategies, design of clear performance metrics, which is extremely important for us to collect and evaluate the progress, delineate clear roles and responsibilities for all of those involved, identify resources and inequities, which is critical to make sure that we leverage our resources, and outline the capacity of our school district to implement the plan so we know what we still need to do to make sure that we can support and sustain it and monitor and evaluate school improvement as required by the US DOE document ESSA. Are there any other questions that we can answer for you?
How do the actual practitioners, the folks in the schools feel about going through all these assessments again? Is this, there's a lot of burden, I imagine, also on school-based staff when they have teams go into the schools. Have we assessed that, and are we concerned about that?
Well, so one of the key changes from if this was originally done to what is happening now is that the leadership teams have all changed and transitioned out. And of course, we've had students graduate over the past 2.5, 3, and now going into the third year, because they started in 2019 when they did the initial assessment, and they were using 2019 student data as well. And so that looks very different than what the data looks like today and what the needs for students will be going forward in redesign. How do they feel? Again, so, anytime we have issues of compliance where if we're going to use federal dollars to redesign and we're required based on the plan that RIDE submitted to actually follow a process in which we have to do a needs assessment, then we have to plan, then we have to take action on that plan and implement it. Then we have to monitor and report out on it. So what really happened with the prior report was that it was prepared by the Bar Foundation at the request of RIDE. It was never funded by PPSD or RIDE, and they pretty much did needs assessment. They did some recommendations for planning. It looked at different aspects of going into the takeover, what RIDE should consider, but it never created a plan for redesign, and it never launched redesign. So administrators in the next wave, when they came in, were given these plans and said, here, go ahead and take this and
But there's not an efficient plan.
And do it on your own,
implementation.
which was another part of the issue. Do it on your own during a pandemic while students are sort of like hybrid learning when they were out of in and out of buildings or became ill coming back after absences. So I think at that point the transition, the leaders, at least in the 6 schools, as I've done observation walkthroughs and had conversations with all of the teams, they're actually very eager and anxious and excited to go through this process and finally develop a plan and implement it so that we can see student achievement gains going forward.
So there's willingness, there's excitement
Yes.
about it, even if it's time consuming. It's also federally mandated.
It is.
So
And
there's not
there'll
much choice here, it sounds
Well, and there'll also be, the level of support that we want to provide with Schoolworks did not exist in just the creation of a report and then kind of walking away saying, take the report and go ahead and implement it on your own.
And I will say that Schoolworks is commissioned by RIDE to do other type of work with some of our comprehensive school improvement CSI schools in the district. And they've been doing that work for the past few months. And Devon and I and a few others have been able to sit in on those sessions. And the principals and the staff members are really excited about the outcomes of that. They walk away with a clear-cut action plan on how they can leverage the strengths of their school to improve student outcomes, whether that's increasing diversity, increasing sense of belonging, increasing academic achievement. So I think Schoolworks brings a really unique approach to why we wanted to work with them, because they have a proven track record that can build Providence schools. And so far, the administrators that have been able to get exposed to Schoolworks are really excited about it.
And I would just add, we've all been on the flip side of the site visits. So, I'm not going to lie, it is a burden to have a site visit, but we have streamlined absolutely everything we can so that really the bulk of it is handing over documentation. And then it's, a few 45-minute focus groups. So like as a teacher, you would meet with one group of people once for 45 minutes. Leadership probably twice, maybe 3 times throughout the duration of the visit. So again, yes, it is a burden, but we have streamlined absolutely everything, so it's as minimal as possible.
And really, I think that what we need to focus on is that it's so important that we want the lens from all of the groups. And if we don't have that active participation, then we'll be in a situation where a year from now, after Redesign model selected, all of those stakeholders will say, well, we weren't part of this decision process, because it was we don't want to call it a burden, right? We want to look at it as an investment in terms of, yes, it's our time, but it's valuable because once we make the decision, that's what we're going to actually, develop a plan and implement on.
Is this taking away from instructional time at all from the students? If we
No,
take
no.
the teachers out and do focus groups?
We only do it during non-instructional time.
During non-instructional.
So we do observe instruction, but focus groups would be during non-instructional time.
And when is non-instructional time? Is that, when will that take
So
place?
it's usually when a teacher has like common planning time
Okay.
or a break. So lots of schools would say like all of fourth grade has 10 to 10:45 off. So that's when we would meet with fourth grade.
And is it mandatory that they go through with it or no? Is it optional for teachers?
Ideally, I've never really.
So I think that would be, so the principal, right, and the leadership team, and the school improvement team would really be committed to saying, here are the teachers that, because what the input is valuable in terms of, this is what we would want our school to look like. This is what we want if they end up going to a theme, right, or using a framework like International Baccalaureate, they need to be committed to delivering a rigorous framework of instruction. So it would be impossible for us to give them a report like Spring Point did and just say, here, do IB, without them saying, this is, we are walking into this in terms of, as a faculty, we want to launch this rigorous framework around, and then there were pieces missing because you can't do IB and you have to pick within IB, you have to pick a theme. Like, are we doing languages? Are we doing STEM? Are we doing global learning? Are we doing, visual and performing arts? I mean, there are many options within a framework that you could pick. And so none of that was done. And so I think the disappointment really has been that it wasn't fully launched and that the models weren't really complete in terms of, how do we now take this suggestion and implement it? And it really wasn't anything that the faculty or the school did, right? It was more about the plans were pretty incomplete, and without support, it's very difficult to do.
Really quick, I just wanted to know, was the board made aware, because I was looking through my emails, I didn't see it, was we made aware that there was going to be a presentation or we wasn't? Because I didn't see anything in the email that said there was going to be a presentation in the finance committee.
Today?
Yes.
Well, at the May meeting,
Mhm.
when we missed the finance committee and there was urgency to actually start this work in June, because ideally we wanted to start phase one before students left school on June 24th, which the board meeting's on the 22nd,
Mhm.
right? So it wouldn't be ideal to walk in the last two, if this was approved, walking in the last day of school is not ideal. Right?
Absolutely.
So that was part of the sense of urgency on the timeline, because we're looking at the end timeline, which is November 15th, to have a final decision to present to the council. The board requested, when there wasn't enough information at the time, that there be a presentation and that we come to the finance committee.
Absolutely, thank you. So I think you probably heard it already. We would prefer that contracts like these always go through finance, even if we have to call a special meeting, let us know so we can do that. And then not only that, we would like to see the presentation as well. I'm gonna vote to have it reviewed before the full board. But then I have more questions once I look at the PowerPoint and I get into it a bit more in depth. And like I said, we just want to make sure we're spending the taxpayers' dollars wisely, not just handing it out and just doing any old thing with it. So I really want to make sure that I review it best way as possible. But currently I have no questions. If we could just please get the PowerPoint, and when contracts like these come about, please just come before the finance committee. So we wouldn't even be here right now if that was the case in the beginning. So
And I think it'd always help us too if we get any questions that you might have in advance, like when we get the PowerPoint over to you, just let us know through Lindsay so we can prepare them. And I hear the need for transparency, especially with the redesign work, because it's so meaningful and impactful. So I'm recognizing everything you're saying, and we're going to do better to make sure we give you all the resources and stuff you need beforehand.
Appreciate it, Chris. Thanks for that commitment.
Yeah, and also all this information is gonna be shared to the board member after.
On the
Like the
22nd?
presentation
Yes,
and-
we intend to do the presentation
Okay.
again on the 22nd.
Okay.
And there will be a Schoolworks representative that will also join us on the 22nd.
But we will be getting this presentation
Yes.
before that time.
Lindsay, do you?
Correct.
Share that, if you can share Val out to
Yes, he has, yes, the same presentation that you,
that, I can send everybody.
great, thank you.
Please. Thank you. Any other question? In the absence of questions, can we recommend this for passage to the regular board meeting next week? Have a motion?
I think we're continuing it, right, until the school board meeting.
Yeah, so we'll just vote that it goes before the full board and
Yes.
then we have additional questions then. I'll make the motion.
So moved.
A second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Any abstentions? Any oppositions? Ayes carried. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You're welcome. So, Ernst and Young.
I'm happy to lead us through that. TC may join me. So Zach Scott, Deputy Superintendent of Operations. So the contract we have before you for financial support services from Ernst & Young, and I'll want to compare or share about how it connects to some of the previous work we've done with them. But really, the output here is a small portion of it is to refresh our long-term financial projections, and then the kind of deeper work we're going to do with them is around picking 2 or 3 areas that will go in depth on to identify deficit reduction areas for the district for ideally implementation beginning in FY24. So let me give a little bit of a background on the work with Ernst & Young and how this proposal or this contract would build out with. I should start by saying that this was just the procurement mechanism was bid out through a MPA. We had 2 bidders. Ernst & Young was both the lowest cost bidder and we felt the most qualified as well. So we felt that was the right vendor to pick. But we had worked with Ernst & Young about a year and a half ago in January of 2021. And that was right, as you remember, kind of in the thick of COVID. And so we were dealing with a lot of financial uncertainty, a lot of unclear revenue streams. Some of the stimulus dollars were just coming in, but we also knew we had a lot of unplanned for expenses and had impacts with enrollment as the state saw a 3% decline. So one of the key tasks they did for us then was to create a fairly complex long-term financial model for the district, knowing both what we knew then as well as projections for the future around enrollment and future revenue streams. So that helped us plan and was kind of our blueprint for this year as we went through this current fiscal year to plan for FY22 and FY23. And then another portion of that work they did actually was early on helping the district look at best practices around learning acceleration. So they did some analysis of student attendance, student performances in the pandemic, and that helped serve as one of the starting points for the district's work around, how to prioritize different things as we transition to the current year. So that was that last contract. What this one will do is, again, do a quick refresh of that long-term financial plan. So it will take updated enrollment and revenue and expense information to do that. And I kind of, in my head, have that as 20% of their work. The other 80% is one of the things that they did in the last exercise was to look at key areas of potential savings for the district. Because like many districts, we have expenses that grow at a historically higher rate than our revenue. And so over time, you're always trying to have to make cuts to balance. And that's not a place you want to be in. And fortunately, we're not in, I think the position some districts are where that the kind of difference is much starker. But we also know that, the more we can do to reduce some of the expenses on non-student facing issues or items that are not critical to student learning, the better. So they had identified 6 potential areas: transportation, custodial and facilities, health benefits, staffing, special education, and the district footprint. And so in that work they did with us a year and a half ago, they said, here are these 6 areas. We think you could potential savings is about this much, but we didn't go further in depth. So the 80% of the time that they'll focus on in this is to actually, we'll pick 2 or 3 of those that we think have the highest yield, most feasibility, and less impact on student learning. So that if we begin work now and can have this wrapped in the fall, then as we're planning for the fiscal year 24, we can start to implement those changes. So for example, if there were proposed changes around health benefits that might require negotiations or discussions with the city or our healthcare providers, and so we could start that underway this year so that we're prepared for the following fiscal year. So that's the gist of it. I don't know if Chris could add anything.
No, and there's been a lot of talk about, around the district footprint, and they're gonna help us probably identify that with, reduction in enrollments as well, so help us figure that out with, especially if we have new buildings coming on. So it'll be really a good thought partner in that aspect.
Thank you. Questions?
The way the sheet was written, it wasn't clear to me that the deliverables are actually coming up with cost-saving recommendations and suggestions for, like, I don't know what vendors maybe to go to or anything. It was more, I thought, as it was phrased in there, it was more about, like, what are we going to do with falling enrollment rates? But the deliverables are clearly, like, we want your financial recommendations about where we can most have, where we should achieve cost savings. And yeah.
And I don't know, I mean, in their proposal, they essentially, they said, we know we identified 6 areas. Let us talk through how we would go in depth on 2 as like as a sample, so that they are kind of primed to do that. And one of the benefits of working with EY is their learning curve is going to be very short compared to other places. They know the district, so they don't really have to learn much and can dive right into actually, like, okay, what are some recommendations versus, like, let's learn how the district works. They're already up to speed.
Any questions? Thank you so much. We look forward to getting these cost savings areas. And do we have a motion to recommend?
Motion.
So move.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Any oppositions? The ayes got it. Thank you so much. CTAC.
Hi there.
Hi.
I had spoken with President Thomas, and he had asked that we continue this contract until the regular school board, because there is a scope of work associated with the Community Training and Assistance Center to support the school board. So this came about as part of the RIDE retreat a few weeks ago that President Thomas and Mark had attended and met with Bill and Ken from CTAC, and they were still working through the scope of work. So President Thomas just had asked me if we could continue it for the regular school board so that you all could come together with CTAC to determine the final scope of work for that contract.
Is there any details though on the contract that we could know, like, right now?
Yeah, absolutely. So the contract summary, this is the continuation of a contract that was awarded last year as part of the Department of Education Teacher School Leader Incentive Grant. So we had put out a RFP for leadership development to support both central office staff as well as school leader staff as part of the DOE TISL grant. TNTP was awarded the contract for the school leadership development work, and the Community Training and Assistance Center was awarded the contract for the central office leadership development work. So over the past year, we have worked with them on a weekly basis. We have all been part of the leadership development training. So it's really focused on building the capacity of the central office leadership staff, and then in the next scope of work for next year, focusing on kind of broadening the touch points with the district and central office staff.
So we currently are in a cycle focused on the turnaround action plan. So we have 4 working groups, one on instruction, one on professional development, data and assessment, and
District functioning.
thank you, Molly.
See my mom.
So we meet weekly with our groups and a facilitator from CTAC, and then I would say every 6 weeks or so come together as a full group to go through the topics that we have been discussing, get feedback from other groups, input on how we're implementing the TAP as a district, and kind of what are the additional supports we might need, what are the areas of capacity to build to ensure that the TAP is being implemented with fidelity, and also that I think everyone in central office is very much on the same page about the goals and the importance of implementing the TAP. And I think one of the things we've heard, and Chris Mullen and Zach, please jump in, is that I think every department kind of has a different understanding of their role in the TAP or previously had. So really making sure that central office is very aligned in the mission of the TAP and the deliverables, the metrics, the goals, and implementation. So that has been the focus of this cycle. In future cycles, the focuses, some of them would be giving and receiving feedback, communication, the importance of focusing on the mission and a mission-driven organization. So really thinking about how the central office is in service of schools, and what does that really look like when we are, I know the superintendent uses this phrase a lot, like the resource hub for all schools, and ensuring that regardless of where you sit in the organization, what department you are in, if a principal, if a teacher is coming to you with a request or a need, kind of what does that service and support look like, and really making sure we're all aligned on the goal. So this would just be a continuation of that work for year 2.
All right, and then where does the school board loop in at? Because I see it says school board leadership development. So what exactly, are we going to be receiving the same training as?
No, so I think that is the part that President Thomas, I think, wants to finalize with you all and work through. I know he and Mark had conversations with Bill and Ken during the RIDE retreat. Those were separate from kind of our RIDE retreat, so I am not privy to kind of what was shared during that time. But I know he was going to reach out to Bill and Ken to continue those discussions, and I think kind of tailor that scope of work to ensure the support you all are receiving is the support you want and are looking to have.
And can you just, for the whoever's in the crowd, well, visibility, is just your name and title, please.
Oh yes, Lindsay Shanahan. I am currently the deputy chief of staff.
Okay. Thank you.
Lindsay, that was really detailed and helpful. Appreciate it.
Yeah, because I was going to ask the clarification when you had said that President Thomas said you should continue. Does that mean that you should not present what you're saying right today, or you should wait till it's the full?
I think with this particular contract request, it's 2 separate scopes of work. So we have the scope of work to support the central office leadership and kind of the work I just went through with the various cycles of improvement and the teams going through the sessions. But then there's also the scope of work for the school board particularly. So I know he wanted to still work through that scope of work with CTAC, and I believe with all of you as well. So his request was to continue for regular school board until he has had that opportunity to continue the conversation about the school board scope of work.
I just want to be clear. So that means we should not make a motion on this today, based on what he told you.
I believe, I don't know if
Yes,
it's
he
the
talked to
motion
me
to
just now
continue.
also. He wants to provide more input onto the school board component, so he recommended we just continue this entire contract until the school board meeting. I don't know if it makes sense to divide
That's
contract into
kind of
two. I don't know if you
uncommon. We should have known.
No, I think because the reason why I'm asking this is that even if we continue, we're gonna have to continue conversations at the regular board meeting anyways. Even if we approve anything here, we still have to go through the regular school board to make final approval. But it is important, especially $255,000. The purpose of the finance committee is to vet. So it's not at the regular school board that we're going to do the vetting. What we're doing at that time is to approve what the finance committee has gone through. So if we're continuing this one, I'm wondering at the regular school board whether we're going to have to now vote or we're going to have to postpone it till next time when finance committee will have to go through again the details. That's why I just want to get a clarification. So if we're not going to vote on it today, it means like, okay, well, I don't know if you understand what I'm saying.
No, I understand what you're saying, and he wasn't, what he was clear on is he doesn't want it approved today. That's what he was clear on.
He doesn't want
He
it.
does not want it approved today.
That sounds good.
All right. So we didn't have to ask questions. That's what I'm
We
saying.
did not. Okay.
So, all right, let's save our saliva for the regular school.
Absolutely.
That's where I want to clarify because there's no point in discussing what he doesn't want to continue on to the next one. So we're gonna move on this one, right? Skip this one. Pass. Okay.
We'll continue it, yes.
To be continued.
Well, is there a motion then to disapprove?
Yes.
That's what I'm
Second.
asking.
Well,
You move the motion?
I move the motion.
Okay.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposition, abstentions, the ayes have it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you. On the material
Tough
service
crowd.
contract.
Should have been the other way.
That's gonna be me, and I am really realizing you have to have great eyes to look at this spreadsheet, so I'm really sorry about that.
I think it's 0.5 font.
I'm gonna be sharing that as an Excel file later, not the PDF, because I printed it out and realized. So I'm Molly Hannon, Director of Purchasing for the district. What this spreadsheet is an annual list that we come to the board with for review and approval that is really the operational bread and butter for the district, annual approvals. And so some folks may think of it as the less interesting stuff, but it is critical for operational functioning. I'm happy to go through items that may have jumped out to folks. I have two things in mind that I want to present as kind of like wins for us this year that are different from previous versions of this that we may have looked at. But I'm also just happy to start with questions about like, what is this and what's the purpose? Because I know we have some new members on the committee, and I have Chris interrupting me with anything.
Ms. Molly, the first question is that I don't have anything beyond this.
Here we go.
No.
We did receive it in the PDF, however.
Nothing.
Okay.
The only
Ahead
page
of
you see is
time.
this one.
It's
We
just
don't know how
not
much is
printed.
it, the breakdown and everything, nothing. Or do you have anything?
I don't.
I did receive it in the PDF, so it did make it to that. Thank you, Al.
Alrighty.
Um,
I didn't see it in here.
Would it be helpful to share it on the screen? It is a 130 row spreadsheet, so I don't know that we want to go line.
No, we don't want to see this. At least we should have a summary page
Yeah,
that tells about.
yeah, that was what was in the document that was shared.
Okay, so you
that I'm over.
I have seen it.
Okay.
I would appreciate like a 2-sentence reminder about what this is, and then the two things you wanted to go into.
Yeah, so there are kind of, I would say, two different buckets of things that are on this spreadsheet. One is like pre-approved and on-call vendors that the district makes use of as needed throughout the year. And that would include the plant maintenance team. A lot of these are like a door handle falls off of a door at a school. We've got a vendor that we know that we call Columbus Door to come in. We've got a locked-in price for a door handle. We've got a locked-in price for an hourly rate for them to come in and do the work. We issue kind of an open PO to start the year with Columbus Door, and our plant maintenance team calls them as needed to come out and fix things for a total amount not to exceed whatever number is shown here on this spreadsheet. So there's a bucket of those that are plant maintenance. There are also those on-call pre-approved, and this is kind of a preview of things to come for schools. If they want to buy a bucket of paint, we have 3 vendors that we would know we're going to go to them and buy a bucket of paint, paper, educational materials, textbooks, labware, like beakers, Bunsen burners, those sorts of things. Those would be the on-call pre-approved. And then the other is a one-time payment that the district makes for operational things. For example, the software that we have on our time clocks that are installed in every school and building, that every day a teacher and people are coming in and they're badging in. We use Andrew's technology, Nova Time. We make a one-time payment to the vendor in the beginning of the year to have that software and make use of it throughout the year. Those would be the kind of two buckets and examples of what's in those two buckets that the board is looking at, rather than seeing 131 different things, looking at them in a spreadsheet as one set. Would you add or change anything?
All I would add is that all of these vendors all these services or materials were previously bid out. So all these went through an RFP process in prior years. We're just looking to continue on with these services for the upcoming fiscal year.
So like you will issue an RFP for carpets throughout the districts and get pricing from 5 vendors, whoever submits bids. And then what you're looking at here is the vendor we picked for a not to exceed amount for the year.
How much is it? We don't even have how much it is.
Total of the column. So most of these are set up as a not to exceed, so the dollar value is very high, and we might not spend that high. I didn't run the total, but it would be the FY23 award amount summed up. I mean, this represents potentially millions of dollars for the district throughout the year. Yeah, no, it is not. But the other thing I would note is like the fuel line, for example, like we buy gasoline. You buy gasoline right now, you know that the cost of gasoline is going up. So you'll see an increase from our FY22 amount that we anticipate spending on gasoline to our FY23 amount. So that was another thing.
But Dell Computers is on there, Apple Computers is on there, Wally Computers on there. Those are like not to exceed $3 million in total. So we know that we're gonna procure computers from Dell or from Apple for iPads and so on and so forth.
And what that does by setting that limit where it is and identifying that vendor is ensure that when a school needs a new Chromebook, we know who we're going to, and we're able to procure it as quickly as possible for a fixed price that we've set with the vendor ahead of time, which also, in a time when prices are skyrocketing for things, really benefits us to be able to lock in a price in July 2022 and be able to use that price in March, April 2023.
So can I have a Chromebook?
It's up $307. Yeah.
So there's no surprises on here, and this is the process we do every year. And
I mean, I'm sure you've been part of this for a few years, and you remember the spreadsheet that Molly was talking about.
Yes.
I'm sorry that you don't have it in front of you. Yeah, we definitely will get it.
yeah, if you can follow up with it as an
I'm
Excel
gonna send it as
document,
an
as a
Excel
PDF,
spreadsheet.
that would be helpful because there's.
I'm not doubting.
Oh yeah, I there are 2 things I'm excited about that are not different this year. Chris is like, everyone wants to go home on. So the first is an expanded list of pre-approved vendors for schools to use. What we hear so often is that, well, you only have 2 school art supplies vendors for me to go to. And so one of the things that I wanted to do this year is have more options. And so one area that I am really proud of is this year going forward, we will have 5 different educational furniture vendors for schools to have kind of pre-approved. So you need a new desk, you've got 5 different vendors to pick from their catalogs, but also if you really want the Smith System Diamond 2-student desk, you can compare prices against Demco and School Specialty to make sure that we're getting the best price. So last year we only had 2, this year we have 5. So that's kind of the first win that I see. The second is around staffing agencies that we use to fill positions, particularly for specialized instruction. In previous years, it's a similar thing. We didn't have that many ready to go who were doing work on our behalf to help us staff to fill vacancies. This year on this spreadsheet, and this is again to your point of the dollar value, you'll see that we have 12 different staffing agencies that we have vetted through a competitive solicitation, and we have them basically on retainer to help us in recruiting folks who are speech and language pathologists, occupational therapists, one-on-one nurses, physical therapists, behavior analysts, and autism specialists, so that if a vacancy does arise, we have a pre-approval in place with, X staffing agency who is already starting to do work on our behalf to help us fill that vacancy as quickly as possible, which is again just a direct support to schools to meet their needs as quickly as we can. So those are the two things that I'm excited about that are enhanced from previous versions of the spreadsheet.
I have two questions. The first question is that, so with the pool of vendors that we have right now in this spreadsheet, if we need, do we still have to put an RFP? Or we're gonna say, okay, out of these 5 vendors, let's just pick one. What's the process?
This is really only goods. So that would be my first thought, with the exception of, okay, they're doing installation for that door handle or whatever the case may be. But for services, we're doing solicitations like the one that is resulting in Schoolworks. We're doing a full competitive RFP, or we're doing a mini bid through State of Rhode Island Master Price Agreement, like how we did the Ernst & Young contract. So we are still issuing RFPs basically constantly. But this, for goods that are needed in classrooms on a daily basis, helps us move quicker with good locked in pricing.
Okay, that's my first question. The second question is, that's good. Thank you so much for that. The second question is working on timeline. I'm not comfortable with, I'm the chair of the finance committee. I don't have information ahead of time. We usually have this procedure that on a Friday, we're meeting on Wednesday. At least by Friday, we should have this list of agenda for the next meeting sent out to the committee. Because we have 48 hours to post, right? And that 48 hours will be on Monday.
Mm-hmm.
Now, so yesterday I was sending a message to Al, where is the agenda? What's going on? He said it's still being worked on. Was that yesterday or the day before?
It was the day before.
On Monday. So I think we really need to do a better work with this, That's gonna help us, and it's gonna not make us look like, we're just coming here and just going through things. It is important. And as we're ending this session, I hope by the time we move into the next session, because we've made some gains in the past session, checking the vetting, the new contract page and all that, making it look nicer.
Mm-hmm.
Can we please, I'm just appealing that we will have that going forward.
Yes, understood.
Thank you. That's my question. Any other question?
No, I'm done.
All right. So what should we do? Move this recommended for approval?
And then for the food board, can we have?
You will have the Excel spreadsheet tomorrow morning.
Thank you, I
Yeah,
appreciate it.
absolutely.
Do we have a motion?
Motion.
So move.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposition, any abstentions? The ayes have it.
Can I make a motion to adjourn?
That's the next item on the agenda.
You should bring
Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
So move.
Second.
Second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There's no opposition. There's no. Thank you so much.
That was intense.
Who was our guest? I didn't introduce myself. Our guest.
And ladies with nature.
Oh, yeah.
Hi, Jean.
Sorry.